Christmas at my parents' house always smelled like pine needles, burnt sugar cookies, and something else I could never quite name. Resentment, maybe, or expectation. Probably both. I stood in the hallway, tugging at the sleeves of my sweater, listening to laughter pour out of the dining room. My brother Ethan's laugh was the loudest. It always was. "Lena, are you coming or are you hiding again?" Mom called. I took a breath and stepped in. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. Red napkins folded into perfect triangles, gold-rimmed plates, candles flickering like they had secrets to keep. Everyone had already taken their seats. Everyone except me. Ethan sat at the head of the table, of course. He always did now, ever since he made it. His tailored blazer hugged his shoulders like it was custom-made to announce success. His watch caught the candlelight, flashing just enough to be noticed. Next to him sat his wife, Marissa, lips permanently curved into a smile that never quite reached her eyes. And across from them, I froze. Two unfamiliar faces. A silver-haired man in an immaculate navy suit. Beside him, a woman in her 40s, calm, composed, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. They didn't look like family. They looked like money. "Lena," Ethan said, standing halfway. "You remember Richard and Claire, right?" Richard, Claire. I did remember. Very well. But I said nothing, just nodded and smiled politely. "Sit," Mom said, motioning to the last chair, the one tucked near the corner, as always. I sat. Dinner began, turkey passed, wine poured, compliments exchanged, and then, like a performer waiting for his cue, Ethan leaned back and cleared his throat. "So," he said casually, "I finally closed that stock deal I told you about." There it was. The room leaned in. Marissa placed a hand on his arm. "Oh, Ethan, don't bore everyone with numbers." He laughed. "Come on, they'll love this." I watched Richard's fork pause midair. Claire's eyes flicked toward Ethan, just for a second. Ethan didn't notice. "It was a risky play," he continued. "Early-stage tech stock. Everyone said I was crazy, but I saw the potential." Mom gasped softly. Dad smiled with pride. "And now?" Dad asked. Ethan grinned. "Let's just say I turned 6 figures into 7. The table erupted. "Wow. That's incredible. I always knew you had a head for business." I felt my stomach tighten. Because Ethan didn't see potential. He stole it. Part 2, the thing he forgot. Ethan had always been like this. Growing up, he was the golden boy, varsity captain, student council president, the one teachers praised and relatives bragged about. I was the quiet one, the observer, the girl who listened instead of spoke. And later, the one who noticed things. Like how Ethan never built anything from scratch. Like how his brilliant ideas were always conveniently adjacent to someone else's work. I glanced at Richard again. He was watching Ethan now, not smiling. Claire dabbed her lips with a napkin, composed, but her jaw was tight. Ethan kept going. "I mean, honestly, if you're smart enough, investing is easy," he said. "You just need guts, vision, timing." He raised his glass, "to betting on yourself." Everyone raised theirs. I didn't. Because I knew the truth. That stock deal, it wasn't his. It never was. Part 3, the past he buried. 2 years earlier, I'd been working as a junior analyst at a boutique investment firm in Boston. Long hours, low pay, endless spreadsheets. But I loved it. That's where I met Richard Hale and Claire Donovan. They were partners, quiet power players, old money mixed with sharp instincts. They noticed me. Not because I talked the loudest, but because I caught mistakes others missed. One late night, Richard leaned over my desk. "You see things," he said. "Most people don't." That's when they brought me into a private pitch. A tech startup, small, unproven, revolutionary. I believed in it immediately. I did the models. I ran the risk analysis. I flagged the red zones and the gold ones. And I brought the opportunity to the table. Richard and Claire funded it. And Ethan overheard. He had been visiting me that week, asking questions, pretending interest. A month later, he called me. "Hey, Lena," he said casually. "Quick question, that startup you mentioned, what was the ticker symbol again?" I hesitated, then gave it to him. Because he was my brother. That was my mistake. Part 4, the lie that paid him. Ethan didn't invest like Richard and Claire did. He didn't negotiate. He didn't back the company. He bought in late, after the groundwork was done. Then he told everyone the success was his idea. He told our parents, his friends, his wife. He told the story so many times that it became truth. Except to the people who mattered. And now, at Christmas dinner, he was telling it again. "In fact," Ethan said, glancing around proudly, "this deal put me in a whole new league. People like Richard and Claire don't even look at opportunities like this unless someone like me brings it to them." Silence. The candles flickered. Richard slowly set his fork down. Claire folded her napkin. I felt my heart pound. Ethan had just crossed the line. Part 5, the room goes cold. Richard cleared his throat. "Ethan," he said calmly, "could you clarify something for me?" Ethan smiled. "Of course. You said you brought this deal to us." "Yes," Ethan said easily. "I pitched it personally." Claire tilted her head. "You did?" "Yes." I watched the confidence drain from the room. Richard turned to my parents. "Did you know," he said, "that your daughter Lena was the analyst who identified that company?" Every head turned. I felt heat rush to my face. "What?" Mom whispered. Richard continued, voice steady. "She ran the numbers. She flagged the opportunity. She presented it to us." Claire nodded. "Without her, we wouldn't have invested." The silence was deafening. Ethan laughed weakly. "Well, I mean, Lena helped, sure, but..." Richard raised a hand. "No," he said, "she didn't help." He looked directly at Ethan. "She led." Part 6, the unraveling. Ethan's face went pale. Marissa's smile vanished. Dad frowned. "Ethan, is that true?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. Claire leaned forward. "And one more thing," she said. "You were never a partner. You were a late buyer who benefited from insider timing." She paused. "Timing you got from Lena." The room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. Mom looked at me, eyes wide. "Why didn't you say anything?" I swallowed. Because no one ever listened. Richard stood. "We didn't come tonight to embarrass anyone," he said, "but we won't sit quietly while credit is stolen." He turned to me. "Lena," he said gently, "we wanted to ask you something tonight." My breath caught. "We're opening a new fund," Claire said, "and we want you as a full partner." Gasps. Ethan's chair scraped loudly as he stood. "You can't be serious," he snapped. She's competent," Claire offered coolly. "Ethical," Richard added. "Honest," Claire finished. Ethan had nothing left. Part 7, the aftermath. Dinner ended early. No dessert. No laughter. Just shattered illusions. Later, as coats were grabbed and goodbyes mumbled, Mom pulled me aside. "I didn't know," she said softly. "I know," I replied. Ethan didn't look at me as he left. Marissa followed him, silent. Richard and Claire lingered. "You handled yourself with grace," Richard said. I smiled. I learned from the best. When the door finally closed, I stood alone in the dining room. The candles had burned low. The room that never belonged to me finally felt quiet. Part 8, what came next? 3 months later, Ethan lost more than his reputation. Word travels fast in investment circles, especially when trust is broken. As for me, I moved into an office with glass walls and my name on the door. Not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. And every Christmas after that, I bring my own wine. And I sit wherever I want. The first thing that changed after Christmas was Ethan. It was the way people looked at me. At work, doors opened faster. Meetings paused when I spoke. My inbox filled with messages that used words like impressed, insightful, lead. I didn't brag. I didn't post. I didn't correct the past. I just kept working. Because real revenge doesn't shout. It lets the truth echo. Richard and Claire moved quickly. The new fund launched under a quiet but respected name. No flashy press. No social media hype. Just serious money and serious people. And me. I became the youngest partner in the firm's history. Ethan found out the same way he found out about everything else. From someone else. Part 3, the fall begins. 2 weeks after New Year's, Ethan called me. I stared at the phone for a long moment before answering. "Hey," he said, voice tight, "we need to talk." "We already did," I replied calmly. "No, I mean really talk." I almost laughed. He invited me to coffee. Same cafe where he used to lecture me about thinking bigger. I arrived early. When Ethan walked in, he looked smaller. The confidence was gone. The watch was still there, but it felt like a costume now. "I didn't know they'd do that," he said, sitting down. "At Christmas." "They told the truth," I replied. He rubbed his face. "They're cutting me out." "Of what?" "Everything," he snapped. "The deal, the network, the introductions." I took a sip of my coffee. That's what happens when people realize you weren't the source. He leaned forward. "You could fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You could tell them it was a misunderstanding, that we worked together." I set my cup down slowly. "Ethan," I said, "we didn't work together." His jaw tightened. "You're my sister." "And I was your cover," I replied. Silence. "I gave you credit you didn't earn," I continued, "and you took it like it belonged to you." He stood abruptly. "You think you won." I met his eyes. "No," I said softly. "I think I finally stopped losing." Part 4, Public Truth Hurts the Most. 3 months later, everything exploded. Not because I planned it. Because Ethan couldn't stop pretending. He tried pitching another startup, used the same language, same confidence, same lies. This time, the room was full of people who knew Richard and Claire. Someone asked a question. Someone checked a detail. Someone made a call. By the end of the week, whispers became warnings. By the end of the month, Ethan's name became a red flag. He wasn't charged. He wasn't sued. He was something worse. Untrusted. Marissa left shortly after. Turns out, confidence is attractive, but credibility keeps marriages alive. Mom called me one night, crying. "He won't leave his apartment," she said. "He says everyone turned on him." I closed my eyes. "No," I said gently. "They just stopped believing a story that wasn't real." Part 5, the invitation he didn't get. That summer, our fund hosted a private investor dinner. Small, exclusive, powerful. I wore a black dress. Simple, clean lines, no logos. Richard raised a glass. "To Lena," he said, "who sees what others overlook and has the integrity to protect it." Applause filled the room. And that's when I saw him. Ethan. Standing outside the glass wall. Not invited. Not welcomed. Just watching. Our eyes met. For the first time in our lives, the roles were reversed. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I turned back to the room. Because the best revenge is not needing their reaction anymore. Final part, Christmas 1 year later. The next Christmas was quieter. Smaller table, fewer expectations. Ethan didn't come. Mom asked me, "Do you miss how things used to be?" I thought about it. "No," I said honestly. I miss who I thought he was. Later that night, as snow fell outside, I sat by the window with a glass of wine. Not expensive. Not cheap. Just mine. I thought about the girl who used to sit in corners, shrinking herself so others could shine. And I smiled. Because now, I take up space. And anyone who wants credit for my work better make sure I'm not in the room. Because I always am. The end.